Chinese Communist Party reveals its plans for Taiwan under Xi Jinping's leadership. It has major red flags. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party has wanted to conquer Taiwan. Peacefully, ideally. Because when has the CCP ever resorted to violence? Besides all those times. But violence takes effort, and for some reason other countries disapprove of it. So the Chinese regime would like Taiwan to just surrender quietly. That's why it's been pushing for the One China principle and its one country, two systems framework. The One China principle says that there's only one China, which is the CCP-ruled People's Republic of China, and that Taiwan is part of that China. So basically, it's a complete lie. Meanwhile, One China, Two Systems is the framework that the party promised to use to rule Hong Kong and Macau, letting them keep their own government systems, including independent legal systems. So basically, a big fat complete lie. But One China, Two Systems is the Chinese Communist Party's way of envisioning reunification with Taiwan under its rule. It's kind of like Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston getting back together, if Jennifer Aniston was forced into it and had to surrender all autonomy. Okay, also if Jennifer Aniston had never actually dated Brad Pitt. Because when the Chinese regime uses the word reunification, that's propaganda. The People's Republic of China never had Taiwan in the first place. So Taiwan, as a functioning democracy with its own laws, military, and government, isn't interested in surrendering to the Chinese Communist Party. Not that the party cares. Let's just say the CCP is not big on consent. Last week, the Chinese regime released its Taiwan White Paper, outlining its plans and promises for Taiwan. It's the first Taiwan report issued under current Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The last one came out more than 20 years ago. And the timing of the release had absolutely nothing to do with U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's recent visit to Taiwan. I was totally planning on releasing that months ago. It's just a coincidence that it was hurriedly scribbled on the back of a McDonald's napkin. This white paper has some very alarming differences from the 1993 and 2000 papers. Back in 1993, the Chinese Communist Party promised Taiwan a high degree of autonomy as a special administrative region, at least on paper, which worked out so well for Hong Kong. This includes allowing Taiwan to have its own administrative and legislative powers, an independent judiciary, and power to run its political, military, economic, and financial affairs, which worked out really well for Hong Kong. In both the 1993 and 2000 Taiwan White Papers, China even claimed that it would not send troops or government personnel to Taiwan, as long as they surrendered quietly. The Chinese government even okayed certain economic and cultural agreements with foreign countries. And when has the Chinese Communist Party ever shown itself to be untrustworthy? Same joke? Well, Chinese leader Xi Jinping is at least a little more transparent about what the Communist Party actually wants to do. The report is clearly Xi's way of strengthening his political position before the Communist Party's 20th National Congress, their big meeting that will happen before the end of the year, the one that will cement his grip on power. At least he hopes. He wants to take credit for adopting new and innovative measures for Taiwan, with a holistic approach to cross-strait relations. Holistic, huh? I don't recall the holistic healing shop aligning my chakras by conducting military exercises outside my house. Because this holistic approach happens to not renounce the use of force. Nothing's off the table for China. That explains why China's ambassador to Australia said Beijing will use all necessary means for Taiwan unification. As for what that means, he said, "You can use your imagination." Wow, this guy is not a great diplomat. Anyway, it doesn't take much imagination to know what China's prepared to do. I've already flashed that long list twice already. This document should be a warning to both Taiwan and the entire international community that Xi's plans go beyond just Taiwan. I'll explain more after the break. Welcome back. China published its first white paper about dealing with Taiwan under Xi Jinping. It also shows just how important Taiwan is for Xi's global ambitions. Let's first look at what Xi actually plans to do to Taiwan. The latest Taiwan white paper still maintains that the rights and interests of the people in Taiwan will be fully protected after unification. Although Xi Jinping saying your rights will be protected is like Hannibal Lecter saying your liver won't be eaten with fava beans and a nice Chianti. The white paper also promises to continue Taiwan's social system and a high degree of autonomy, which again worked out great for Hong Kong. And wouldn't you know it, this new Taiwan white paper didn't make any promises about not sending troops and government personnel to Taiwan. So essentially the offer is, let us take over and we'll let you keep your rights if we feel like it. Or we'll kill you. I never thought I'd say this, but with negotiation skills like that, they really should consider reading The Art of the Deal. The paper also makes no mention of Taiwan being able to retain its own army, unlike the previous Taiwan white papers. But don't worry, China won't target people in Taiwan. Use of force will be a last resort. Just trust them. And ignore the fact that sometimes their first resort is their last one. The Communist Party will only be forced to use force, aka take drastic measures, in response to provocation of separatist elements. What kind of separatist elements? There's no room for separatist activities in any form. Like, for example, when Hong Kong banned a film because it showed a 1-second scene of a protest. China's crackdown on Hong Kong is a huge red flag for what's to come for Taiwan. But only if you think history is anything to go by. This time will be totally different. And next time, Lucy definitely won't pull the football away at the last second. But the Chinese Communist Party isn't hiding what's happening in Hong Kong. Instead, they're calling it a resounding success. Someone should probably tell them that the winners write history, not the present. We can see what's happening, you know. If you think the party doesn't have the same plan for Taiwan, well, their Taiwan white paper explicitly calls out Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party for adopting a separatist stance. And it doesn't take much imagination for what would happen to them. Seriously, hustler magazines leave more to the imagination than the CCP does. As for everyone else, the Chinese regime will make sure that they'll free their minds and teach truth from facts and the right political orientation. Which totally explains what China's ambassador to France meant when he said China would re-educate Taiwan after unification. Do they know that 1984 is a novel and not a playbook? The Taiwan white paper explicitly shows China's plans for Taiwan aren't just about nationalism and unity. They're also about China's strategic interests and global ambitions. China knows that it needs to conquer Taiwan to break the first island chain and exert influence in the Asia-Pacific. That's why the Taiwan white paper says unification is the only way to avoid the risk of Taiwan being invaded and occupied again by foreign countries, to foil attempts to contain China and safeguard China's interests. So, to keep Taiwan from being invaded, they're going to invade them. That's like a bully shoving a kid in a locker to prevent other bullies from shoving them in a locker. Gee, thanks. It's necessary for China to be ready to fight against any force standing in its way. This clearly indicates that Xi's ambitions with Taiwan play a greater role in his global strategic interest. And we could see China push the international community to fall in line. One way the Taiwan white paper does this is by justifying China's interpretation of UN Resolution 2758. The latest Taiwan white paper claims the resolution settled the Taiwan question, backs the One China policy, and denies Taiwan's status as a separate government. Except that's not what it does. That resolution just allowed the People's Republic of China to join the UN. It doesn't mention Taiwan at all. The resolution contains no mention of a Chinese claim of sovereignty over Taiwan, nor does it authorize the PRC to represent Taiwan in the UN system. When it was passed back in the 1970s, even Chinese Foreign Minister Zhou Enlai admitted that if UN Resolution 2758 is passed, the status of Taiwan is not yet decided. Whatever Zhou said back then doesn't mean the Chinese Communist Party can't lie about it now and get other countries to accept their lies. In recent years, Beijing has managed to further institutionalize and normalize its stance on Taiwan within the UN by signing secret agreements with UN bodies, restricting Taiwan's access to the UN and its facilities, and embedding PRC nationals across various levels of UN staff. Speaking of lies, the Chinese Communist Party also claims that the One China principle is a universally accepted norm. Universally? How is that universally accepted? Oh, you mean Universal Studios having John Cena kowtow to China so the last Fast and Furious movie could get their money. Gotcha. The point is, the Chinese regime will definitely push countries and movie stars to isolate Taiwan even more. It's pretty much a joke when the Chinese Communist Party says domination over Taiwan would bring world peace, prosperity, stability, and human progress. But hey, who doesn't want to see Brad and Jennifer get back together by any means necessary? So what do you think? Leave your comments below. And remember, China Uncensored is supported mainly by viewers. So visit patreon.com/China Uncensored. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making episodes like this. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.